embedded in our society. I can tell you for sure that you can't go a kilometer radius without finding a group of people congregating somewhere to play football across the world. So with this in mind is when I came to the realization that we should really position football as infrastructure, especially in the African context, the African continent. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think I'll go quickly through this because when I talk about football as infrastructure, many people say it's similar to sport for development, but it's not. For me, when you say football as infrastructure, it recognizes the intrinsic value of football. So football is not an instrument to achieve something. It's already achieving a lot in our continent. Sport for development is very program dependent. So that, you know, if you're running a sport for development program that has been funded, and a lot of it is also externally funded, when the funding stops, the impact stops. But you know, people don't stop playing football. People don't stop engaging in sports. So we have to think of sports, of football, as infrastructure. As I said, the value is usually from outside the system. So we have this also kind of donor-dependent approach, as opposed to us realizing what this platform is delivering and designing really our business model around that. So with football, with sports for development, we ask what can we deliver through football? But when it comes to football as infrastructure, we are already saying football is delivering value. But how do we design an ecosystem that appreciates this thing is driving a lot of value, giving people identity, helping people to congregate regularly, and then design a business model around that. Next slide, please. So as you can see, football already functions as infrastructure. It reorganizes communities. You saw tournaments. We see the major tournaments, for example. Last year here we had the CHAN. You saw what the country for a whole month, everybody was just focusing on football. We are going to have AFCON next year. But even more important is the tournaments that happen at the grassroots level and how they help to, you know, organize or reorganize those grassroots landscapes. Sorry. You can just keep the slides on. I think it's okay. Thanks. Football also mobilizes capital. You know, clubs, leagues, money is invested into this ecosystem. Football shapes governance norms. I'll mention something later around, you know, the solidarity payments that you know, we see in the transfer market and how that can be used, for example, even to finance health when it comes to, you know, women's development. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just a comparison of what infrastructure, you know, these are the traditional fields that we think of as infrastructure, and then comparing that to football. So for example, infrastructure has an enabling function. It connects markets and people. Roads connects people. That's why we build roads. Football does the same. It enables health, education, employment. So many people are employed in the football ecosystem. So, for example, our government should be looking at these from a data perspective so that it can inform how much they invest in the football or sports space. The network effect of football. The more users we have, the more people use a road, you know, the better or the more connected we are. Similar, more participants we have in the football space, the better the health outcomes. Participating in sports is proven to have, you know, health outcomes. You can just maintain the slides if. Yeah. So football is a public good, but here I'll put a small disclaimer. It can also be a public bad, and that needs to be researched a lot, because we usually assume that, you know, everything that happens when you say, okay, we are occupying our children productively by, you know, making sure they're participating in sports. But these same networks, these same ecosystems have been known to promote, for example, crime among young people. So even as a government, as, you know, as society, you should be keen about what is happening in the football space. Then sports and football have long-term returns. You know, it's not just about quick profits. And I'm glad from the panel discussions, there was those discussions around how businesses, view their investment. Not everything is about, the balance sheet and annual returns. Can we start to look at sports as an infrastructure that has long-term benefits for our people? And that's in the areas of, human capital, youth empowerment, stability, social cohesion, unity in our country. And then, of course, there's the multiplier effects of football around, health, education, employment, and governance. Next slide. So, again, people usually, whenever I talk about football, people say, why football and not other sports? Initially, I'll just explain that as a passion thing, because I played football, I still play. It's a game I love. But also more and more as I try to understand the space, the football ecosystem, I realized we need to invest football as an anchor tenant in the wider sports ecosystem, because football drives the numbers globally and in Africa. So it's like an anchor tenant. The same we have like a Carrefour, for example, in the mall. If we have a good anchor tenant for your mall, then the whole mall works better. And that's the same for our sports industry. If we are going to develop a sustainable sports industry, then we need to invest well in football. Next slide, as I think I'm running out of time. So these are some of the areas where really we see football operating as infrastructure. It's able to deliver health outcomes, using these teams, clubs, tournaments as platforms for health screenings and things like that. People have talked about accessing people, but people are already congregating in football spaces. So how can we use that? Football, of course, promotes education, employment. We've talked about climate. We're building stadiums across the country, but do we have climate in consideration? Can they be designed in such a way that, for example, they can harvest rainwater? Can they be designed so that they can become mini grids for solar energy? And this is what it means to really design a sustainable ecosystem. Because what we are seeing now is a lot of investment into infrastructure, but without clear pathways as to how we are going to recoup these investments. So this needs to be designed, this needs to be a matter of policy. Then, of course, there's social cohesion. Sports promotes unity, but again, we should be careful. It can also promote division, for example, between Man City and Arsenal fans, but also at Gor Mahia and FC Leopards. So these are some of the things that we should really have in mind as we talk about football. Next slide. Yeah, so our Africa Football Development Network, I can share the link for those who are interested later. It has over 150 trusted community access points. These are the academies and clubs that we are talking about. And the reach is more than 100,000. And this is not something that we have really pushed out there. It's organic growth that we have experienced through our Africa Football Development Network. We are currently designing pilots in Kenya and in Ghana, and these are focused around women's health. We know now there is also a big push to get more women into football, but we have to ask ourselves, what will be the gains of getting more of our women playing football? And that's why we are focused on this area of health and really understanding how can football drive health outcomes and how can that now be translated into value propositions that we can use to attract investment from government, from the international development sector, from the private sector, in really creating a sustainable sports ecosystem. Next slide, I think I'm all done now. So these are the people we want to talk to really as the Football Foundation for Africa with our AFDN, which will soon be registered as its own for-profit organization. As we're talking about models, ours is a hybrid social enterprise. So ministries of health and sports, global health funders such as the Gates Foundation, they announced $2.5 billion that they're going to spend on health in Africa. How can we use innovative models such as ours to attract this kind of money? Then corporate health partners, insurance companies are big in the health space. And also women's health innovators. So those who are passionate about women's health and innovation around women's health, I'd be keen to talk to you. We also have our partners, Policy Strategy Group, who help us in that area. But really one of the reasons why we attend such events is to meet people who are experts in that which we want to achieve. So if there are any women's health innovators in the room who would like to share more around what we are doing with the Africa Football Development Network and see where you could plug in. I think the last slide now. I think this can be last. No, so this we can skip this. This is just some data that I had come up with on the Kenya case and how things work. And then this is really like summarizing how we are trying to understand, because there's two things involved here. First is looking at football as delivery infrastructure, but also in our conversation, we met an organization that was trying to look at the solidarity and transfer payments that happen in the football ecosystem, and they were trying to see how that can be adopted for the health ecosystem, because community health funding, they were explaining there is a big challenge there, and now they were looking at us who are in the football space who have something that is working. Sorry, I think I can share more later. Otherwise, I think you get the grip of what we are doing. In view of time, I would love to engage you with you more and explain more about what we are doing at the Football Foundation for Africa with my colleagues in the room. Thank you very much.